Jan Błachowicz, boy, I got to give this guy some credit. I mean, what a good job he has done of keeping his name out there. Keeping your name out there is paramount in this space, but it's nearly impossible to do. I mean, right, in all fairness, the way that the news cycle works, you fight, you then have 48 hours. Otherwise, that's old news. You have a 48-hour cycle before they move in to what would then be viewed as the current cycle, also known as the next cycle. That's how it works, right? All sports. It's about what's now and what's next. To be able to get yourself any airtime to talk about something that you've already done, very hard to do. Błachowicz has a fight coming up with Glover. We don't know the date. So you see where that becomes very tricky to talk about. So you have to get a little bit creative. If you understand that it's the now and next, in terms of news and headlines, speculate. And Błachowicz is now talking about he might move up to heavyweight after 2 or 3 fights. Well, great. That's great to talk about. Not to mention he was smart enough to say after 2 or 3 fights, because now we can handle the follow-up question, which is, well, who do you think those 2 or 3 fights are going to be against? And now it allows him another opportunity to speculate. And these aren't compliments I could have given Błachowicz early on in his run. Right after he won the belt, he was making blunders and then he was disappearing because of the blunders. After this last win, I don't think I've seen the guy miss. Everything he says has been great, but it's also been interesting, and that's the key. How do you keep it interesting? Well, you have to know the rules. You have to know your objectives, which I'm sharing with you now that sports only go in one direction, right? I was watching SportsCenter the other day. They had football on, but they didn't have Joe Montana, the greatest quarterback of all time. Because it's what's now and what's next. So if you're going to operate within those confines, you have to make sure that you have a message that either has to do with what's now or what's next. And Błachowicz has left the door wide open. And I don't even think he was clever enough to do this intentionally. I think it might have been unintentional, but Błachowicz, you did it. Either way, you did it. You're still in the headlines and you've got no fight coming up. Blachowicz last 3 interviews, to put in perspective for you guys, okay, he just beat the UFC's fastest rising star. He just beat arguably the UFC's single greatest talent. None of these headlines that I'm referencing for you had anything to do with his fight with Adesanya. That is how much yesterday's sport is yesterday's news. That is how much it is. But Blachowicz is still out there. And he's still talking about things. Now, I don't love the idea of him moving up to heavyweight. I don't necessarily love the idea of guys even speculate about doing that and doing the whole champ thing, right? Champ was cool when it was unique. As soon as the whole sport goes in that direction, if you want to be different and unique, refuse to do it. Just to put Khabib into perspective for you. Khabib was very good at saying, this is the toughest division and this is my division. I have no plan to ever leave the division. It frustrated people. It shut the door on it, but it also made Khabib stand out when everybody else is saying what the guy next to him said. It was very cool at a press conference the first time a guy showed up wearing a bow tie and sunglasses. But after he does it, if you go and do it, that's now called gimmick infringement. It's strange. And this sport always seems to run in those ways. I still remember the day that Daniel Cormier coined the phrase, share the octagon. He was specifically talking about Curtis Blades. He specifically paid Curtis a compliment. So, he's a very good fighter. He will never share the octagon with me. And he won't share the octagon because he's not popular. Daniel laid the whole thing out. But the bottom line is he coined the phrase, share the octagon. Everybody's saying it now. I mean, just by one example, everybody starts saying it. I remember the Strikeforce event when Robbie Lawler looked at an instant replay after his fight with Scott Smith and said, let's run it back. That is a football term. That is a common term. It was never used in MMA. And ever since the day Robbie said, now you got all these guys saying, well, let's run it back. I'll share the octagon with him and we'll run it back while wearing a bow tie and sunglasses on stage. Okay, you got to come up with your own thing. But you have to be very cognizant of this. If you think, as Błachowicz, I believe, did, think that you need to dangle and talk about going into a different division to keep alive the hopes that you may someday be a future championship. If everybody else is doing it, you don't need to do it. You don't need to do it at all. And you could do it for a variety of reasons, including putting your own division over. I mean, this would be very low-hanging fruit. This would be very obvious, but you can say, I'm the perennial division, or one of these fat boys can take some weight off and come down here. I'll give him a shot at the title, by example, or you don't have to touch it at all. It's really got nothing to do with you. What's going on in the heavyweight class really has nothing to do with you. And if you're saying that you're going to leave it and go after heavyweight, then you're insulting your why. Why would you leave your own weight? Do you think you're going to get beat? Do you think you're going to clean it out? Do you think the guys here aren't good enough? I mean, right, it's one of these things where your words, even unintentional, do have consequences. Words matter. And the meaning of those words matter. And moreover, when somebody like me is going to sit back and try to dissect what you said, but more importantly, why you said it, don't sound like a fool. And I don't suggest for you Błachowicz has done it. I'm only sharing with you. Błachowicz has done a very good job of understanding the cycle works in this way. What is now and what is next. Błachowicz is bringing you what is now and what is next. It's why he's keeping himself in the headlines. And there's a few different shticks where you can do it. Henry Cejudo is doing it just by saying something that catches your eye. Okay, great. He's the only one doing it. Henry's going to continue to succeed. But I am now left in a jeopardy. If we're going to talk Henry Cejudo, I'm now left in a paradox of trying to figure out, is Cejudo? Is he serious when he says he's coming back? Is he back? If Henry Cejudo is in fact back, it was the world's quietest re-entry to sport by any world champion in history. I don't feel as though Henry has a lot of misses as of late. That would be the grand slam. That would be the slam dunk. That would be the touchdown of misses. But the only reason people didn't know is they just know if he was serious. I share that with you because if Henry's watching, we do need a little bit of clarity, Henry. If you are in fact back and you're wondering why your phone's not ringing with interviews and people trying to line you up, we don't know if you're back. You said you're back. Some important people believed it. Aljamain Sterling believed it. He's now called you out. TJ Dillashaw believed it. He's now called you out. But if you are in fact back, you got to just tell us a little bit better. You got to give us a little bit of a reminder. By the way, how did we get on Cejudo? I'm trying to tell you guys about Błachowicz.